question is, are the people who manufacture stuff back and forth across the border going to stop doing business because pot's legal here?
Business interests aren't going to sit still for losing millions of dollars a day because of border wait times simply because Canada takes a different domestic social policy on cannabis.
Yes, business interests. Sometimes they just seem to pop up, and every so often in the most unlikely of places.
We have seen an explosion in prison construction that lags only slightly behind the explosion in incarceration.
There are more people in jail in America now than ever before.
In the United States, it's one of the fastest growing industries.
Some major investment companies at one time described private prisons as one of the best investments you could make.
So you can make more money building prisons than any other type of investment.
They're extraordinarily expensive to build. They're even far more expensive to operate and maintain.
Right now in the United States of America, the biggest growth industry is the privatized prison complex.
Japan, for instance, incarcerates at 38 people per 100,000 population. The United States incarcerates at a rate of 726 people per 100,000 population. In a 20-year period, the prison population in the United States quadrupled.
We have just shy of 5% of the world's population and almost 25% of its prisoners.
Even South Africa, at its worst, didn't have as many prisoners per capita as America has now.
Texas just built 77 prisons in about the last 20 years.
We find state treasuries on the verge of bankruptcy as a result of prison construction.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room. We're almost doubling prison space. Some think there aren't enough prosecutors. We'll hire them, with the largest increase in federal prosecutors in history.
In the late 80s, there were about 5 privately run prisons in the United States. By 2005, that number had reached over 260.
As soon as you've accumulated a certain amount of capital from building prisons, you can start investing that in ensuring job security, ensuring there'll always be more prisoners around to require more prisons.
We have private prisons? What the fuck is that? How did that happen? How can you profit over people going to jail? That's scary. That's a bad, bad sign. Our society is in deep, deep, deep trouble if nobody's looking into that.
Correctional guard unions have become powerful lobbying groups, pushing for longer sentences on less serious crimes. California's has become one of the most powerful in the state. The California Department of Corrections budget rose from $923 million in 1985 to $5.7 billion in 2004. Between 1977 and 1999, overall local and state spending on corrections across the country grew 946%, almost 2.5 times the rate in which spending on education increased. And prisons aren't the only thing money is being spent on.
There are millions of drug tests per year. There's money to be made on that. It's huge.
It started off with people saying, we really need to test people in dangerous occupations. Things like police officers should be tested, pilots in airplanes. Then somebody said, well, our athletes, we should probably test them for drugs too. Then somebody came along and said, well, it's not just the professional athletes. How about the athletes in colleges and high schools? They need to be tested too. And then they thought a little harder and they said, well, suppose we just test everybody that goes out for an extracurricular activity. That should be constitutional because they don't have to do that, you know. So now if you want to join the chess club at school or the French club, you got to pee in a bottle. Now they're pushing to make laws to test all children in school. All the studies show this doesn't have anything to do with whether kids use drugs or not. So it looks to me like this has a lot more to do with the money that's being made for drug testing. Can you imagine how much money will be involved if we can randomly test every child in school?
A lot of these places that have been urine testing have refused to continue to do it because the only thing that these urine tests are finding is marijuana. The other drugs that people take dissipate from their systems fast enough to not be found.
If they smoke a marijuana cigarette. 28 days later, if they pee in a bottle, they're going to show that they've had a drug. But if they use a hard drug, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, in a long weekend, nobody can tell that they've used that drug. So what does that say to our young people? It says, if you don't want to get caught, don't use the soft drugs, use the hard drugs.
It's not just urine anymore, it's hair and saliva. They'll do blood testing. There's industry there. This is money. They're not doing it for free.
The most profitable industry in the United States is pharmaceutical.
Dollars involved is just staggering.
Could it really be? Has medicine really become that profitable? The fact is it has. In 2005, U.S. prescription drug sales rose 5.4% to $251 billion, and global pharmaceutical sales rose 7% to $602 billion.
Now, why would pharmaceuticals be threatened by a plant? The answer may be as simple as one word: natural. Because a significant amount of research to date has confirmed or suggested that marijuana in its natural state is still the most effective form. Can you imagine a world where you or I wouldn't have to pay for certain medicines?
After dealing with about 10,000 patients over the last 15 years, I would say that over 200 different medical conditions respond favorably to cannabis.
It appears to have benefits that we never ever knew about.
Glaucoma,
Epilepsy, muscular dystrophy,
arthritis,
multiple sclerosis,
Wasting syndrome,
ability and chronic pain,
depression, anxiety, hepatitis C, cancer,
chemo,
AIDS patients.
Is there a product out there today that provides as many medical benefits as cannabis?
No.
It remains an unutilized major resource.
The way to riches in the pharmaceutical industry is to have a drug which can be patented.
Cannabis is problematic right from the start because it's a multi-molecule drug.
In 1930, it wasn't possible to patent plants. And that's the reason that pharma never picked up on this, because by synthesizing and owning compounds, that's where the profit motive comes into the pharmaceutical industry.
The patent in the United States lasts for 20 years. Well, you can charge whatever you want at that time, and that's where you make the killing.
There's no money to be made off natural plants. If you can use a natural medicine that you can grow in your own home, which costs pennies to use, you're going to do that.
You need water and dirt. Not only that, you have that plant forever.
Prime motivation behind any drug company is to make money, and as much money as possible.
They're corporations, and corporations, everybody knows that it's like that diffusion of responsibility thing. There's so many people working for corporations that they lose their humanity.
So those are potential customers for these pharmaceutical companies that are not there if they're using a natural plant.
It's unlimited. You grow more, you get more medicine. Pharmaceutical companies don't want you growing your own medicine.
The government supported a small drug company by the name of Unimed to take a synthetic THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and to put it into capsules to be used as an oral medicine. This became Marinol. This THC in Marinol is exactly the same 21 carbon molecule that's in herbal marijuana.
But it's not the same as medical marijuana. It's not a crude mixture of things, and there's no guarantee that you get the same results. You can make a synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol in a test tube. It'll have exactly the same number of atoms and the same arrangement. But how in the test tube can you put the electron spins together, the subatomic quirks and quarks, if you like, of that compound in the same way that a biological enzyme system will put it together? It can't happen.
In the case of a synthetic compound, if it's only an ingredient from the cannabis, they can formulate that as a drug and make a lot more money out of it.
We're confused that if, you keep hearing that there's no scientific proof to medicinal benefits of marijuana, why are there drugs like Marinol on the market?
Why do they even exist?
Well, that's part of this double talk about it. If we take and change it a little bit so you believe it isn't marijuana, then it's okay. It's a great medicine.
They're trying to make marijuana into medicine because It is medicine.
Why did the government actually grow marijuana? I mean, the government has had marijuana programs that existed since the 70s.
It's impossible for me to believe that the government even believes their own propaganda. What I do believe is this, that you can fool some of the people some of the time, and they're doing an excellent job of that.
And for all the claims of these drugs being a more viable medicine because there's no high, we check some of the side effects. For Marinol, dizziness, feelings of exaggerated happiness, drowsiness. Last time I checked, those were signs of getting high. If it is indeed side effects of marijuana that are preventing the pharmaceutical world from accepting marijuana as a viable medicine, then they better start paying more attention to the products they've been marketing for years. Every year, prescription medicines kill over 100,000 people.
The pharmaceutical industry has been excellent at convincing the public that they need their potions. If you watch any kind of commercial for drugs, they're always using the third person. For example, where does a headache come from? It comes from out there somewhere.
Don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle.
How many people in this country alone are addicted to antidepressants? How many people who are on antidepressants really have imbalances, and how many of them just got off of a bad relationship and they're depressed?
It seems to be acceptable to give people something as long as you're wearing a white smock or you've given them a legal prescription. Doesn't matter how deadly the particular drug might be in terms of side effects.
What we call modern medicine is actually alternative medicine because it's highly experimental, it's often dangerous, often toxic, and it kills a lot of people.
To me, it's crazy. There's a lot of stuff out there that'll affect you in different ways.
Look at aspirin, heroin, both invented by Bayer.
I thought heroin came from opium seeds and
Just
was...
natural effect of opium, you keep making it more and more concentrated? No, you have to add certain chemicals to it and tweak it a certain way. It doesn't just come from opium itself.
What was heroin made for?
As a cure for morphine addiction and coughs. Heroin, the sedative for coughs.
Pseudoephedrine. That's the main ingredient in methamphetamine, is to cure the cough, the cold. I get a cold, oh, I think I'll do some meth.
When you look at it from a large perspective, like, you know, what's weed?
Even Francis Young, the DEA's own judge, who took medical testimony for over 2 weeks, made this statement. Marijuana, in its natural form, is one of the safest, therapeutically active substances known to man. Yet, despite this, and the ever-mounting number of real-world patient success stories, cannabis remains listed as a Schedule I narcotic. Under that category, marijuana is classified as having no known medical value.
I have multiple sclerosis. Hold on, don't
When we
wait.
first met Greg, his shaking was so severe, he informed us that he would need a few puffs of marijuana in order to participate in the interview. The difference was night and day. What do you say to those that say marijuana needs to be tested and regulated and have the high taken out for pharmaceutical companies to consider it a valuable medicine?
Huh. That's a pretty, and I only mean this as a measurement, as to how much it is actually a pathetic thing to say. I mean, just look at me. Is it not blatantly obvious that I have just enjoyed however many tokes? I look happy.
Greg has been using marijuana for years and stated to us that he's never experienced any negative effects.
I'm never, I need my marijuana. That's stupid. It takes away my discomfort, let's call it. It does enhance my very being.
Where do you think you'd be if you didn't get to smoke it, like dealing with your pain?
I would have found a way.